Stephen Hawking said that people who boast about their IQ are losers. And he's right. IQ is certainly not the only thing that matters when it comes to wisdom or success in living a good life. However, the ability to make intelligent decisions and cultivate wisdom in our life is a thing that matters. So this begs the question, if IQ isn't the only thing that controls how intelligently or wise we behave, what else does control this? And what could we do to become more intelligent? Well, you are listening to the right podcast episode, because if this question interests you, that is the topic of today's episode. And we're going to have a great set of lessons for how you can make better decisions and become a more wiser person who behaves more intelligently over the whole of the year to come. And now time for a quick advert break.
The comfort of your favorite seat is now your comfy car selling command center, thanks to Carvana.
It doesn't get any better than this.
Your favorite seat's the best spot in the house. Make it even better by entering your license plate or VIN and getting a real offer in minutes.
There really is no place like home.
And speaking of home, Carvana will pick up your car from yours after you finalize your offer. Visit Carvana.com or download the app and sell your car from your comfy place.
Man, that sunset is gorgeous.
Grill, patio, sunset. Hard to get better than that. Unless you're browsing Carvana's inventory while you soak it all in.
Oh, burger time.
So sit back, get comfortable. Carvana's got thousands of cars under $20,000 just waiting for you.
I could stay here forever.
Carvana, where car buying meets comfort meets convenience. Download the app or visit Carvana.com today.
Hello and welcome to the Growth Mindset Podcast. I am the host, Samuel Webster Harris, and we're diving into building intelligence. And let's firstly just dive into IQ, because it's something people don't always understand, or what intelligence even means. So IQ is basically a test of our ability to understand things quickly. It's the ability to do calculations of maths or shape-based puzzles, or to calculate the answers to language puzzles quickly under time. It essentially tests how good we are at learning the rules of a system to be able to calculate the correct output based on some inputs given to us. And it's basically, at a simpler level, is how good are you at recognizing patterns and working out the answers from some prior stuff given to you by working out what pattern it fits. And you could also say that this means that intelligence is the ability to calculate the consequence and the impact of things, and thus to behave intelligently. People who are better at understanding the impact and consequences of their choices and their actions would be behaving more intelligently and more wise. So you don't need to become better at maths to live more intelligently. You need to get better at understanding the consequences and the impact of the different decisions that you could make, so that you can make different decisions and get better outcomes. So whether you have a choice concerning what work you should be doing, where and how you spend your money, the people that you spend time with, or the activities that you do in your free time, these are all decisions that we make internally and that we can get better at doing to become more intelligent. So intelligent people should usually, on average, make these choices better, and they'll learn which choices are going to have the result that will lead them to more happiness and achieving the output that they want. And before I get over my skis here, I will say that just because you have higher, it can even give you more dissatisfaction due to feeling that you have more potential that feels unfulfilled, or you might feel misunderstood or simply bored. And happiness is also, of course, 50% part of our DNA, but behaving intelligently or wisely towards our life is just very important, because it gives us a sense of progress and it gives us the ability to have growth instead of stagnation. And if we have a higher IQ, it might mean that some of these things in regards to life choices might take us less long to learn them, but whatever a new system is that we are presented with, and someone with a higher IQ, potentially when they're given some form of new system that they need to learn to calculate the inputs and outputs and what their decisions might mean, should be able to learn that system with more speed. If their IQ is basically just how quick they are at learning mathematical things, like that logic may not always transcend into life. And what I want to talk about more is how we can build more logic into our life and make better decisions there. And of course, in life, even if you have a low IQ, you can still learn to spot the patterns of the choices of your actions And some things might take more work to be able to spot the patterns of how things happen in life. But if you put in the time to reflect, you can still get better at behaving intelligently. And it doesn't even matter if you have a genius level IQ, you're still not going to become really good at something without putting the time, the hard work, and effort into anything. Hence, this is why growth mindset is a thing that exists. And the bigger your growth mindset is, the more likely that you're going to have success rather than just how big your IQ is. But sadly, IQ is something that can be tested for very easily, but it actually doesn't designate fully what your success will be, because it's not about how long it takes us to learn something or how natural we find the thing is to do. We can still become very good at recognizing patterns and calculating the result of whatever it is we want to get good at through time and active learning. No one needs a science degree to be able to work out how many drinks it takes them before they end up giving themselves a hangover. And that is a form of intelligence. It is the creation of learning from inputs and spotting the patterns in behaviors. And that is a form of intelligence. You've been able to put this data together to create a form of intelligence around how many drinks it takes for you to become hungover. Now, whether you build wisdom around that, which is then making choices so you don't have regrets around your drinking behaviors, that's the next part that you need to then build. But either way, you don't need to have a genius level IQ to be able to do that. Wisdom is just knowing when you want to pay the price of your actions and to choose the right actions that will give you the happiness or success that you want in any particular area. You could say that wisdom is the ability to make decisions without regrets. And just to dive a little deeper into the concept of what intelligence is, I think it's quite interesting how AI now is getting to the point of being able to do very similar behaviors to humans. And if you look at the large language models that are powering ChatGPT, and what they do is they are essentially pattern recognition machines, and they just use statistics to decide what should be coming next. They'll ingest huge amounts of data, and they can talk back to you just using the statistics of all the different words they've had from the millions of pages on the internet. And so when you type something into ChatGPT, it'll pattern match your question to a sensible answer using statistics of just what word should come next after your question has been finished. So it makes it sound like it's giving you a sensible answer as far as your perception is concerned. And so the more powerful or intelligent AIs become is another way of saying that they are just getting better at recognizing patterns and coming up with the right output given the input that they are provided. And as they get even more powerful, they'll be able to generate completely new, novel ideas based on the data given to them. But that's something that humans can already do based on they can carry on a pattern from where it's got to make new information without only being able to just do the same bits. And sure, highly intelligent people are more likely to take knowledge and currently understood things and break the molds of everything that we know in the world, like Einstein changing the laws of accepted physics. But it can be much less groundbreaking than that to just come up with new intelligent behaviors. Like I was talking about drinking, it could be that you're in a group of friends that all do the same things, and the accepted way to have fun is to get really drunk. That's the shared knowledge of the group. It's accepted by the society that you're in, but possibly you might find that you've grown bored of spending all your money on being drunk and doing the same dumb stuff that you always do. You've found repeated evidence that hangovers are awful, and it would be great to actually enjoy your Saturday daytime instead of spending all of the day on Saturday nursing yourself through it. And society and your friends have told you that having fun is getting drunk, but you can create your own new knowledge for yourself and in your group by declaring that this knowledge is not true, or at least it isn't true for you. That's an example of intelligence in very normal life. Now, of course, some people don't have issues with hangovers and life is to be enjoyed, and drinking is one good way for enjoying yourself. I'm not saying that you're dumb until you stop drinking. I'm just saying that for some people it is an intelligent decision to drink less. For other people, maybe not. It doesn't matter. The point is that you can be more wise within your own set of scenarios. You don't have to accept what you have been told is right, and you can create your own knowledge. If Einstein had accepted what his teachers had told him, we wouldn't have nuclear power. We wouldn't have half of our understanding of the known universe. So behaving more intelligently means that you make it easier for yourself to start spotting patterns in your environment and learn from your environment to make different decisions. Just because you're not naturally a fast learner doesn't mean it has to take you years to make good decisions. I'll tell you a good example from my past. Now, I actually am one of these stupid idiots with a good IQ, apparently. And I had a science and math scholarship at school, and I sat next to this lovely girl who was not as good as me at maths. I could easily understand what the teacher was saying, or I often just wouldn't even listen to the teacher if we started a new topic to see if I could just work out how to calculate these new math problems by myself, because I didn't like being told the rules, because I actually liked working it out for myself. And the girl that sat next to me, she would often really struggle. I would always be happy to help her with the problems, and she just really wouldn't understand the way things worked in the way that I could easily understand. So I'd have to explain things to her, I'd help her with her homework, and it was fine. Like, I always scored better than her, and after the topic was done, I wouldn't even bother to think about it again. Yet, when it came to exam at the end of the year, I didn't revise because I enjoyed the challenge of sitting in the exam and working out the answers and the equations by myself, rather than memorizing how to do different types of mathematics, because I just found the memorizing part boring. I liked the challenge of working out how to do it. But when the results came through from the exam, I genuinely thought there was something wrong with the world, because she had beaten me, and I was like, what the hell? I am better at maths than she is. Like, I'm always helping her, I always get things quickly, and she doesn't. How can this exam say that she is better at maths than me? The exam must be wrong. And I literally remember to this day how confused I was for a while. I was like, I can remember where I was on the grass. I was sat and I was just like, what is going on? The world doesn't work. And I'm so good at maths. I'm always helping her. The laws of measuring intelligence don't work. Exams are stupid. But of course, the exam was not stupid. Actually, it turned out I was wrong and I was being stupid. Sure, I was faster at learning maths than her, and I had much more natural talent, perhaps, at maths, but over the year, she was better at learning the overall maths topic because she studied harder than me, she studied longer than me, she carried on studying the topic after we'd stopped learning about it in our lessons, and she didn't expect to get to the exam and be able to work it all out. She actually revised, and she had a growth mindset. She didn't think that finding it harder to understand maths than me would stop her from getting a good grade. And so she worked hard, and she was right. And of course, I later realized that exams aren't there purely to measure your raw intelligence. They actually measure your overall ability. And that ability does get increased by working hard. And hey, I was very young. Like, it's fine. I now run the Growth Mindset Show. I understand what I was getting wrong. No one had taught me this for some strange reason. Or maybe they had and I just hadn't listened. Either way, I worked it out by myself. Now I run the Growth Mindset Show. It's fine. I'm not a dick anymore. The point is, when we look at our life choices, we can see that we don't need a high IQ to do well in things, and we don't need to wait years for grandfather time to teach us lessons that other people can learn faster. We just need to put more time and effort and thought cycles and reflection into whatever topic it is that we're trying to get good at. When we spend time reflecting, we can understand what we need to do more work on or what's difficult for us. When we're open-minded and experimental with our life and our decisions, we can learn anything about life much faster, and we can get much better at making decisions that will have the outcome that you want. Obviously, I learned that by observing someone that worked harder at revising, that you can get better exam grades. I mean, whoa, genius thing to work out. But yes, turns out working hard gets you good exam grades, and so I started working harder at revising. But it's not just working harder on one pure thing, it's also experimentation. When you look into the world of startups, one of the biggest indicators of whether a startup will succeed is not how good their original idea is or how clever the founders are and what degrees they have. It's also how quickly the founding team are able to get an idea to market, test that idea, and then iterate on the idea and build something new. And so having a fast iteration cycle and being able to change ideas and constantly test them is the way that a small founding team can have the power to outperform their competitors, even if their competitors have better engineers or they have more money. Because if you constantly try different ideas, you can learn faster and change quickly. So it's the same for humans. We don't need to be blessed with the horsepower of ridiculously high IQ or to be able to achieve the life that we want. We just need to be able to spend more time reflecting on our decisions and seeing what the results are of them and experimenting with our lifestyle to get the outcomes that we want and then be able to understand the impact of different decisions that we can make. And this can be in regards to learning where we do our best work that we would be good at, what we enjoy doing, and what could pay us well. It also might be learning where we want to live and the types of people that we want around us and how to engineer the life that we want. This is all part of experimentation to make better decisions. Ultimately, all of these results are in our hands based on the decisions that we make and our actions, and so it's up to us to understand those decisions better. And I watched a really nice video the other day from a guy who has an IQ below 70. And Yet, he was talking about how he was able to find a job that he could keep. And he'd had the experience up until then of just trying lots of different jobs that he'd been started from and fired basically instantly. His last job, where he was going to train to become a carpenter, he'd been in it for one day and they'd fired him for being too slow and probably dangerous to himself. It could have been a really depressing story. And ultimately he was like, okay, I just want a job where I can't get fired, and hopefully a job where I can have the time to learn to do something that's useful enough to be paid for it. And so he looked online and he found that, at least in fast food, they can't fire you if you turn up to your job on time every day and you don't do anything illegal or you don't shout at the customers, etc. So he applied for a job at McDonald's. He made sure he was never late for any shift. And they started on simple things like just frying the fries. And he said it took him longer to learn than other people usually found. But he was able to do it. And he learned a few other tasks over the next few weeks. And he still finds the job kind of hard sometimes. He can get overwhelmed when there's too many orders at the same time. And he certainly has some worry sometimes that he isn't as good as the other people. But he really feels secure about the fact that he just values his job, he's nice to people, and he keeps on being dedicated and showing up on time. They're not going to fire him. And so he just makes sure that, importantly, he just turns up on time every day. He's never drunk on the job. He doesn't take drugs. He doesn't shout at anyone. He values the job. And because so many people that work there don't value their fast food job, they take it for granted, they don't always turn up on time, that means he has a very big advantage. So he's been able to keep his job, and he's got the result that he wanted just by looking at the patterns of his life and his decisions and working out how to find something that stopped him having the same pattern of just being fired. He saw the patterns that he suffered from with his other jobs and just found a place that suited his needs to get the outcome that he wanted. He had a growth mindset. So despite always being fired, he did fundamentally believe that being fired wasn't his destiny, and he achieved something that he wanted, and he now has job security and the ability to pay his rent and live his own independent life. So it's not just pure IQ that's needed to make good life decisions, it's awareness of ourselves, it's the act of spending time reflecting on the patterns that happen in our life and being able to make the decisions that will create the situations we want and identify whatever blockers that we have that are getting in our way so we can do the right things. So basically, that means it's just some extra reflection and just some well-directed thought cycles around a given problem so that we can actually spend time solving the problem. Whether you're bad at maths, bad at hangovers, or bad at being able to deal with a job with a few too many instructions at once, you can still find a solution to your problems. And basically where I'm going with this is to say that the question of how do we become more intelligent then leads to how do we get better at reflecting and learning from the patterns. And so the first and most important thing you do is put more time into it. When you put time into reflecting, whether that's journaling every day or meditating, whether you talk to a therapist or a life coach, or you talk with your friends about your current situation and your goals, these are all ways at reflecting on your life and then problem solving for what you want. Of course, different strategies are better for different problems, and the way that we do these things is, of course, very important. In the same way that you shouldn't seek financial advice from friends that are always broke because they likely don't have good advice, or someone that maybe has high levels of narcissism shouldn't rely on journaling and meditation without doing something that has some external inputs from others, because they probably won't naturally be able to see ways that would blame themselves for their problems if they just do things like journal and meditate, because they're only coming from things internally. But on that, we can all be slightly narcissistic. It's a natural part of our ego to blame situations on the environment, on other people around us for our problems, rather than taking ownership of the difficult decisions for ourselves. And that's why we need to get better at being humble and adopting a growth mindset to actually be good at questioning ourselves or learning from the advice of others, rather than thinking that we know best. But if we are able to make time for reflection and we are able to put our egos to one side, we can then use these different tools to put ourselves through useful different thought cycles that will help us get to the answers we want to make more intelligent decisions. The reason we don't make enough time is because we just have the inbuilt ego that doesn't like to question itself, and it likes to think that it is correct. So we'll often run with our first thought or some prejudices that we don't even notice because that's what humans are built to do.
The comfort of your favorite seat is now your comfy car selling command center, thanks to Carvana.
It doesn't get any better than this.
Your favorite seat's the best spot in the house. Make it even better by entering your license plate or VIN and getting a real offer in minutes.
There really is no place like home.
And speaking of home, Carvana will pick up your car from yours after you finalize your offer. Visit Carvana.com or download the app and sell your car from your comfy place. That's not just the sound of that first sip of Morning Joe. It's the sound of someone shopping for a car on Carvana from the comfort of home.
That's a good blend.
It's time to take it easy, like answering some easy questions to get pre-qualified for a car in minutes.
Talk about starting the morning right.
Just like customizing your terms so your car fits your budget. Visit Carvana.com or download the app to experience car shopping the way it should be. Convenient, comfortable. Ah.
But if you want to be an investor, you shouldn't expect to just invest in a few stocks that you've heard of or you like the brand and assume that you will beat the market and make lots of money, because that's a great way to actually lose lots of money. You could try using an ETF to get an average of the market returns. Or if you genuinely want to start stock picking, you need to create a set of questions that will make sure that you understand what it is you're investing in so you can make intelligent choices. So you'll need questions that will drive you to understand and know how the market of that industry works. That helps you understand what creates changes in that market, how fragmented that market is, how companies make money in the market, and what their general challenges are. And then when you want to go into a specific stock in that market, you should understand who its competition is, what gives that stock an edge, what are the long-term trends in technology or other things that might impact that business, or the macroeconomic trends that factor it. And then you need to work out, like, what's the general investor sentiment? Has it got a lot of hype around that company, or has it been judged very harshly for something that isn't true? And if investors are currently wrong about that stock and it's undervalued, that is then the point where you then want to invest in it, because there's suddenly the opportunity that over time it's going to carry on growing as a great business and other people will realize that it's in demand and it will become a much more valuable stock. And that's how you make money. But it takes a lot of questions to understand exactly what it is that you're going to invest in. That's a lot of time. It's a lot of thought cycles into reflecting about a company and the market it's in to allow you to become intelligent enough to have a better framework for deciding if it is a good investment. So it's just a framework for spotting patterns for success in stock investing. And that's basically how you become more intelligent at anything, is work out a set of questions that will mean you know how to make an intelligent decision on whatever it is you want to decide. Of course, it's not instant, it takes time, but it allows you to make those intelligent decisions from a place of wisdom, regardless of your IQ. When it comes to choosing a business to invest your money in, it doesn't matter what your IQ is, because you can't instantly understand a good investment without knowing the answers to all those questions that I just asked earlier. So that was an example of some questions to make you more intelligent as an investor. But other ways that we can just spend time becoming better pattern recognizers in life at large would be, as I mentioned earlier, meditating, journaling, talking with friends with like an active framework to generating knowledge, or having like a therapist or a coach. And so to go into the benefits of meditating, this is supposedly the act of quietening the brain and not thinking. But of course, the monkey mind brings out a ton of stuff from within you and stops you from being completely quiet. And then to meditate is to wrestle with all these thoughts and try to get back to the ultimate goal of not thinking about anything and letting things go. Now, this sounds super dumb, but it's actually very powerful, because one thing is that sometimes when a thought keeps on coming back, it might be easier to just solve the problem because it's annoying you so much, and you actually come up with solutions to things that keep popping up. And the other benefit is that when you go longer term and you are able to quiet like your monkey mind on like just these smaller things, deeper things will creep out of nowhere when we empty our mind, and we'll get below the surface of the mundane problems and we'll get to like deeper problems in our lives. And Yuval Noah Harari said that he would never have been able to write his groundbreaking series on humanity without his meditation practice, the guy that wrote Sapiens. Or Rick Rubin, one of the most successful and most creative music producers on the planet, uses meditation heavily to quieten the mind, but at the same time get much better at creativity and problem solving. And the other benefit of meditation, of course, is that it helps us stay calm and not let our emotions overwhelm us, and that will allow us to make more wise choices from a place of like clarity and logic, as opposed to just like emotional reaction, which of course is the source of making rash, dumb decisions. So if you want to be more intelligent, being able to understand those emotions and like make more sensible choices as opposed to be driven by them is very useful. Then moving on from meditation, the act of journaling This is another one that takes many forms. It could be as simple as writing just what happened today, what you enjoyed, what you're grateful for, what you didn't enjoy, etc. But you can go a lot further with lots of really good questions that stimulate different forms of thought trains around specifically solving whatever problem you have in your life. And remembering that we just want to get better at making good decisions, then good questions is really powerful. If I asked you if you had a nice day today, you might just say, yeah, sure. If I asked you what you specifically enjoyed today, you could give me some more information and that thought train would go a bit further. If I instead asked you to give advice to someone else to make sure they could enjoy more of the things that you enjoyed that day, you would then go a lot further around giving advice to someone around how to actually create the sort of outcomes that you've been getting that were good. Those are some really useful things to know and that you maybe wouldn't even have reflected on without being asked it. So the point is, good questions drive good patterns of thinking that helps us spot the patterns that we're looking for to make better decisions. And there are so many amazing questions that I couldn't possibly go through them all now. So I'll put a list of just amazing journal prompts that you can use in the description that will just be very handy for you to have. If you have a specific problem, you can choose an appropriate question that will help with that. Otherwise, I also find it nice to just try and tackle one random different question each day to just make me think about different things and perspectives as I'm just going through life. And then there are also great questions specifically more around business or dealing with burnout, questions to help with life coaching or relationship questions to build more trust. There's prompts to help you deal with anxiety, or questions to help you build compassion, or questions that will help build motivation. There's just so many cool questions that you can use when you're journaling. It's so cool. It's hard to explain why I love it so much, but honestly, a good question is so much important. It's often not even the answers, it's the ability to ask yourself better questions. And when I first started planning this episode, I was like, cool, I'm going to give a list of all my favorite questions. And then I opened up my set of questions that I have in Notion ready to choose at any point in time. And I was like, oh my God, I can never choose this. And yes, so I started feeling demotivated. And so I decided I'd go through my temporal motivation questions to help me complete this task of scripting the rest of this episode. So some questions that will give yourself a motivational boost if you're feeling lost are 4 simple prompts that will help you to consider how to complete doing something. The first question is, how would someone who's successful complete this goal? So someone who's successful at writing podcast episodes would just be decisive. They choose a few great questions in my situation. They acknowledge it's not the end of the world if they don't create the perfect example from the multitude of good options they have in front of them, and just get it done. The next question is, how would you feel if you didn't finish the required task? Well, I'd feel like I just wasted my day if I just let this defeat me. And if I reach the end of the day, and I'd probably reach the end of the day feeling annoyed and frustrated that I've got behind on my podcast task, and there's going to be a day tomorrow of stress and anxiety trying to get the episode out quickly when I don't want to be dealing with that. And then the next question is, what is the next immediate step that you need to do? So in this scenario for me, I guess I just need to make a list of 3 questions that would be worth anyone listening to this episode to journal about, and I'll just use those. Stop worrying about perfection or the fact that I could talk for literally an hour going through amazing questions you can ask yourself. And the final question to get yourself motivated to completing a task is, if you could do one thing to achieve your goal on time, what would it be? And so for me right now, I would just write out those questions, fill in some cool ways that you can explore your thoughts with those questions, and then cover solutions to your life problems, and I'd move on. So I did slightly cheat there by using the motivation questions as an example, but I do like to get a little bit meta on my things. If that was very confusing to listen to, I'm sorry. 3 other prompts that I do really like is a journaling question of what makes me feel relaxed. And that's a really nice question that, one, makes me feel relaxed by just listing out the things that reminds me that being relaxed is possible, and there's lots of things that I can do to be relaxed. And it often prompts me to then go and do something like play guitar for a bit to chill out or go for a run, because it just primes me to do more behaviors that make me relaxed. A different question is, what am I craving? Now, that's not to do with food. It's more like what your cravings are for attention or success or money or love, happiness, passion, adventure. And this is a great journaling question to just let your thoughts spill out, and it just gets the juices flowing when you allow yourself to talk about your needs and your desires, and it helps you understand yourself, because we'll often hide our own real intentions and desires from ourselves, and allows you to become more wise around why you're making the decisions you want. why you're making the decisions you're currently making and perhaps how they should change to actually really fulfill your needs. And that's really cool. Another question that I like asking is, what would I do if I didn't care what other people thought? And again, this is a great question for looking further into your own needs and just shedding yourself of expectations and those walls of thinking that control our life, and helps us to break out of those walls and just look in a different way at how we make the decisions that we make. Because often we forget that so many of our decisions are driven by what we think others will think of us. And then when we reflect on how we'd be different, we realize that it actually doesn't matter and we should just go and do those things. So it's really helpful in changing the sorts of decisions you make for the better. So anyway, I've given a few examples of how to ask good questions, and there are so many other brilliant questions that you could use, especially the anxiety ones or the ones for how to think about your life in a 30-year time horizon. And of course, it's the end of the year. There's a set of really good questions you can journal on around how to reflect on the year that's just been and build the sorts of habits and goals for next year. But to save this episode from being 3 hours long, I'm not going to go into them and we will move on. Again, I will just put in the description of this episode just a link to my Notion page of different types of questions you can ask for different problems, because it's so good for things like relationships, anxiety, and all the other examples I gave. So now, on to talking with friends and using peers for making yourself wiser. Now, we can all use friends as a sounding board. Whenever we have important decisions for advice, whether it's business, money, music, relationships, or just motivation to work harder and keep us accountable, we can always use friends to help in these areas by explaining our situation and our issues or ideas and getting feedback on them. It's good to talk to different friends, I think, about different sorts of problems and to have some diversity in the opinions you get. And of course, we'll all have different sorts of people that are better at different sorts of things. But honestly, you can be surprised by the sorts of advice you get. And especially when you come to relationships and things, people often don't talk about the sorts of problems they've been to and the things that they've learned. And it can be really enlightening when you talk about sort of more personal stuff with people who actually share some very personal things back. And it can actually bring you closer together as well as make you wiser. Another thing that I was doing in Nepal that I've spoken about before on the podcast is talking about our roses and thorns at the end of every day. Now, this means that you'll just talk about what you enjoyed and what went well that day, and what you didn't like that day, what was crap. And it's actually just a really nice way to just reflect on your day, and just helps you understand each other. It allows you to hear yourself talk about the things that you want to change and remember what's actually going on and why you're doing them. I genuinely think it makes you a little bit wiser, and it makes you a better communicator with the people around you and understanding who you're dealing with, etc. And another thing that we did was when we had big expeditions, we'd also talk about the things that we learned from the whole experience. So after we'd done the 2-week trek across Annapurna, we talked about the things that we'd learned from that expedition and the things that we wanted to leave behind. And those are some really great questions to talk about with a friend or a partner in regards to things like the end of the year, or after you've had a holiday together, or maybe your job is changing, because it really pushes you to reflect more deeply on those situations that happen. It makes you think about how you're changing as a person and how you want to change as a person. And then when you talk about the things that you want to leave behind with other people, that helps add some social expectation to the fact that you're going to do it, and might help give you some support around making those changes in your life, especially if it's oh, I want to leave my bad eating habits or my drug addiction behind, etc., or my shitty responses to my partner. Whatever it is, there are probably some behaviors that you don't like. But talking about them is a way to reflect and move on and behave more intelligently. So besides friends, we can go one step further and use a therapist or a coach to help make us even more wise. If you taking some professional external guidance to help you make better decisions can be really, really useful, because these people are experts at helping you identify patterns in your life, fixing them and making better choices. That is their job. Sadly, they aren't always free. Often they're quite expensive, but it can be worth investing the time and the money into the guidance that will help you level up your wisdom, your ability to pursue success or happiness. Because ultimately, whatever a therapist or coach is trying to achieve is helping you identify the sorts of problems that you have, asking the right questions that will help you see the situation with more clarity from different perspectives, and to see the assumptions that you maybe are making that aren't true, that are blocking you, identifying the fears that hold you back, and helping you find alternate ways of behaving that will help you get out of whatever problematic behavior you have and give you the confidence to do it, and perhaps also hold you accountable. It's a few things that all sound quite simple because, well, it kind of is. They just aren't obvious things that you would do by ourselves. So essentially, yes, a therapist or a coach, they just ask the right questions and they listen, and they're probably quite good at already spotting these patterns and helping you spot the patterns for yourself, which is the whole point of this episode, is to help you get better at spotting the patterns for yourself and taking that time and giving the right sort of tools to ask better questions to spot these patterns for yourself, to make these choices. A common phrase in growth mindset is deliberate practice. And that's in regards to the fact that it's not just about the time that we put into work or practicing a skill, but the way that we do it. So if you're a musician, it's not just about playing songs that you can already play and practicing scales that you already know, but it's about deliberate practice where you take new challenging songs and you practice it until you can play it perfectly 3 times in a row. It's about learning new scales, or perhaps taking a song that you know but changing the key dynamically so it gives you a mental workout. It's just doing things that push you to become better. And so it's the same for whatever work we do on ourselves to reflect and become wiser. It's about doing different things that push us to become better. So we do need some diversity and change in the types of sources that we use to challenge ourselves and stimulate us to grow more. That could mean listening to different types of podcasts and books, having different types of behaviors to give us more space and time, and using different people such as coaches, therapists, friends to give us different sorts of advice, different styles of feedback, etc. It's certainly the same for the questions that we ask ourselves when journaling or when talking to friends that we hang out with and ask for advice from. Because that's why I said I like to try and have like one random question from my list of questions that just kind of like throw me off into like new ways of thinking and new perspectives without even planning it too much. Because it's just nice to have the diversity and surprise without expecting that you know what is the best question to even ask yourself right now, rather than expecting that you even know what is the best question to ask yourself right now. We all need diversity and change in whatever sources that we use to challenge ourselves and grow in life. It can be really rewarding to change your coach or therapist if you have one, just to experience those different styles working in those different ways. So yeah, do keep it varied. Don't rely too heavily on one tool. Like if you have a therapist, great, use them properly, go to them, but don't refuse to use any of these other tools. Get better at talking with your friends and like getting guidance from them and growing, because you don't want to be dependent on just a therapist for the rest of your life, etc. And ultimately, the better you get at creating different sources of wisdom in your life, and the more you create this like innate hunger inside you and curiosity for improvement, and the more time you put into questioning yourself, means that you will spend more time building more wisdom in your life and becoming better at making decisions. Of course, the point of this whole podcast is to make you remember that intelligence is not just a fixed trait based on IQ. Intelligence is actually just our ability to make better decisions based on different scenarios, and that we can build that intelligence for ourselves by doing the work. Just like my expectation that being good at understanding maths would make me a good mathematician, that was wrong. You have to put in that work before the end of the year. Again, everything that we do in life does take time, and understanding the right sorts of behaviors that we need to put time into to get better at seeing the patterns in whatever challenge it is that we're facing will create the outcomes that we want. It is as simple as that, putting time into the right sorts of behaviors that help you spot the right patterns you need. Sadly, that doesn't mean that it's easy. Putting in time and effort and work into things isn't easy. Questioning yourself and accepting that you don't make the right decisions already right now does require putting the ego to one side. It requires you to build a growth mindset, but you can do it and you can achieve the goals you want. So, 2024, get better at reflecting, look for those patterns in your life, ask yourself better questions, and change your life for the better. Here you are. Those are the tools. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please do leave me a good rating on Spotify, YouTube, iTunes. All of these things are super, super handy for me and will make me feel good and happy. And if you do have any questions or feedback, then please email me at growthmindsetpodcast@gmail.com and I will get back to you. And on that, remember that life is to be enjoyed. So don't put that off until some future goal is eventually achieved. Like, it is something to incorporate into your life as it happened, because life happens now, today. So be kind to yourself, and whilst you're at it, be kind to someone else too. Thank you so much for listening.